Hey everybody, Ketwolski here, checking in with another one of our hashtag Star Trek Picard discussions videos. Today we are going to be talking about the Countdown Comic issue number 2. We already did Countdown Comic issue number 1 a few weeks ago. That was back in November, but the second issue has come out. We have the third one coming out in January. We're going to go ahead and break down some of those story bits here, but I want to go ahead and remind everyone again that for all intents and purposes, these comics don't appear to be required reading, but they probably should be considered alpha canon, so they may be spoiling some things that potentially would be happening inside of Picard Season 1. So if you want to go in fresh to that show and that whole season, definitely go check out another video on the channel because this will contain heavily spoilers for those comics. This story kind of picks up sometime after Picard and Musiker have been imprisoned by Governor Shiana, who's leading the Romulan Colony on Yuyat Beta. She kind of threw them in jail after Picard essentially refused to only evacuate the Romulan colonists and not the 5 billion or the couple of billion Yuyat Beta natives, as well as them, who are in fact a sentient living species. And she didn't like that, so she threw them in jail. So the story picks up sometime a little bit after that, and they are having like this little dinner meal thing where she's kind of taunting Picard and kind of, poking fun at the fact that she has him now, and she's kind of revealing a little bit of her plan to utilize him to get what she wants out of Starfleet. But during that conversation, the entire dining hall kind of erupts in flames and explosions because it turns out the Yuyat species, the kind of, native species to the planet, are revolting against their kind of, Romulan masters, or at least the ones in this colony that are working for them. So they attack the palace area, the governor's palace, and they kind of bust Picard, and then who goes and busts also Musiker out of jail, and then they kind of skedaddle out of the city, and there's a huge firefight. It was very well detailed, very well done there. I liked the, all of the artistry there. It was really well done there. And so they kind of get the heck out of the palace there. And then they go to this cave where they meet up with 2 Romulans, the same 2 Romulans that we kind of got a little of a tease of in the first Countdown comic, and who are most likely going to be Picard's caregivers inside of the Picard Season 1, because they did mention that he has 2 Romulan caregivers, and this is, of course, Zhaban and Laris, and we did learn their names in the first comic, and they go ahead and introduce themselves to Picard and Musiker inside of this little cave, flanked by all the Yuyat Beta, natives there that are in that cave with them, and they divulge to Picard that they are in fact Tal Shiar operatives, which kind of takes him back, and he kind of doesn't really believe that, but they're like, no, for sure, we are super duper operatives, and the reason why we're telling you this is basically we need essentially asylum to get off of this planet, number one, because remember, this planet is in the pathway of the Hobus supernova that's going to be going up and destroying everything, and they are also apparently violated the Tal Shiar's rules by falling in love with each other. They were assigned to this colony, and they worked together for so long, and they wound up falling in love, which is apparently a big no-no, so they're looking to get away from the Romulan Senate and the Tal Shiar, kind of operation there, to get away from everything. And so they kind of not helped, but didn't really stand in the way of this Yuyat species uprising that kind of took place, that kind of sprung them out of jail. And now they're kind of using that to their advantage to get the hell out of there. And they also disclose that the Governor Shiana has an ulterior motive, and the whole reason that Picard and the USS Verity was brought to Yuyat Beta in the first place was under essentially kind of false pretenses, with some kind of nefarious plan to get Picard and the USS Verity under Romulan control for something, but they didn't quite disclose what yet. And while that's going on, Governor Shiana contacts the USS Verity, where we are introduced to a whole new character, which is Lieutenant Newton, who's kind of, I guess the con officer on shift at the time, where she tries to contact them. She tells them that the colony has been attacked, they've got a lot of wounded, and she tries to sell a story that Picard and Musiker are both dead. The lieutenant doesn't buy into the last 2 pieces because, obviously they can't confirm that, so he's not really interested in all that. But he does believe that the colony was attacked, in which it was, in fact. So he's going to start transporting some of their wounded onto the Verity to be treated, and he brings the governor and her aides on board as well. But as soon as she gets on board, she says, hey, I need to talk to the Romulan Senate to find, talk about them, what's going on. He brings her into the captain's ready room to send a secure transmission, and as soon as the aide sits down, he does something on the computer that basically takes over and does a command override and takes over the entire ship's AI and locks the whole ship down. That kind of is where it all ends, and it's not quite clear what Governor Shiana's endgame is here, and it's not quite clear how Picard and Musiker are going to get back aboard the USS Verity and potentially evacuate still everybody that is on this planet in enough time. We don't exactly know when the supernova is going to occur. That's kind of one of the things that's kind of up in the air right now. Specifically, they talked about in the first issue of the Countdown comic. They know it's coming, but they just don't know when different planets are going to be hit by it. It's, kind of all up in the air, space magic, so to speak. But it's kind of interesting to see what they're doing here. I didn't expect it to take the turn where they were going to be Tal Shiar operatives, and I definitely don't know what the hell Governor Shiana's endgame is here with Picard or the USS Verity. I mean, there's only one issue left, which is going to be tying itself into what's going on with the Picard, series. So perhaps this isn't going to be as impactful as I originally thought. I thought this story was going to have some kind of meat to it that was going to be really punchy in terms of effect on the Picard season. But it looks as though this might just be a bit of an origin story for the Musiker character and also an origin story for Picard's caretakers, which we, potentially have already seen because we've seen 2 Romulan-type characters in the Picard teaser trailer. So that might be Zhaban and Laris. It may not. I don't know. But they're, maybe an origin story for just those characters, which is fine. It's totally cool. It's just not what I was expecting, I guess. But hey, those are my own expectations that I've got to kind of manage and deal with as I read these comics and kind of go through them. But I thought the artistry was great. I thought this story, even though it was the exact same number of pages story-wise, it felt longer because there were several different plot threads kind of happening all at the same time. You had the Governor Shiana stuff, you had, Picard and Musiker and the Romulan Tal Shiar stuff, and then you had stuff happening on the Verity, and we were changing locations quite often. So I actually thought this one felt a lot longer I had to check to make sure, because I actually thought this was way longer than the first one, based off of the way I read it. It felt way longer, but they were actually the same number of pages. So this one I thought was much more dense with information in a good way. I thought it had a lot more meat to it and just in that little bit of a story there. So I am curious to see how they're going to tie all this up and tie it back into the overall arcing plot of this, Countdown comic / Picard, which is trying to save as many Romulans as they can before the Hobus supernova destroys and kills everybody. So I think it's definitely interesting. I'm very excited to see what they're kind of doing here, but I am curious, of course, to hear what all of you guys and gals thought of this particular comic. Did you enjoy this one? Have you been able to go and get it? If you're not able to find a link, I'll definitely have one down in the description for you to go and purchase it. And you probably can find one illegally online at some point in the future here. But I'm curious to hear what all of you guys who have read it thought about this one. Are you excited to read the third one? And what do you think potentially Governor Shiana's role is here? And what's their end game with the USS Verity, and how is Picard and Musiker going to get back? I'm curious to hear what all of you guys and gals think about that stuff, so put your comments down below, and let's go ahead and get the conversation started. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies!